This is the Week 3 edition of the $1 Million Mission from OccupyFantasy.com. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm here with Brian Jester, CEO and co-founder of Occupy Fantasy, at Brian Jester FF on Twitter is where you can find him. Again, we're from OccupyFantasy.com, at Occupy Fantasy on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Maybe not for long on that last one, but we'll see about that. What's up, Brian?
Yeah, TikTok doesn't want us to succeed. They just took our latest video down. So, yeah, gotta figure out what's going on with that. But I'm happy to be here. Always excited to do the $1 Million Mission after a winning week and a lot of good topics to discuss. So, yeah, I'm super pumped.
Yeah, and it just shows, while it's awesome, we're gonna have some celebrations about your big win, and all that stuff. But at the end of it, we're still treating it like almost like a losing week. We're digging deep, seeing what worked, what didn't work, seeing how we can improve our process. That's why I love this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that we get to sit and dissect things for 30 minutes, talk about the process, talk about the results, look what other people did. It's always good. And for those, we do have, I know of a few new people who are going to be joining. So basically, if you're not familiar with this series, one, you can check out the playlist, which is linked in the description below. It's every single Tuesday. We review my previous week's 150 lineups. Very transparent about my profit and loss throughout the entire NFL season. We break down tournament strategies, look at what top pros did, and then new this year, because Moose and I are in a quest for the $1 million in the Pick'em and Survivor Challenge on DraftKings. We talk a little bit about that as well.
Absolutely. Yep. And as Dot Bets points out, I know this is a football stream, but are the Cardinals ever going to lose again? I don't know.
No,
I stopped following.
They're actually not. No, they're actually not. They're never gonna lose ever again.
Nope. Just be 15 years in the future. How are they still winning? They've won 14,000 games in a row. Yeah, so let's jump into it. Again, we like to show Brian's profit and loss being very transparent. So if we talk about how he did on FanDuel last week, 2,100 in entries for 13-11 in winnings for a minus 38% ROI. It's slowly creeping up there for FanDuel. We're getting there.
Yeah, not bad. I talked about it in. If you guys aren't following along with the Yahoo Bankroll Challenge, where I'm doing the start with 0 January 1st, try to build it up to 10K, and I'm definitely now doing weekly updates in the blog on OccupyFantasy.com. This week I talked about having a floor in NFL Classic that is kind of unparalleled compared to other sports. Like even when I have a bad week, like the most I can lose in NFL Classics, like 60%, 70%. So, and that kind of shows here, like I haven't even come close to taking down a FanDuel tournament, and my ROI is, negative 40% or something.
Definitely. What's up, Carl? He says, why is the kid's name Blue? I don't know what he means by that, but we're all good here. So let's jump in over to DraftKings. That's where we had your big win, which I was surprised. Normally when you win on DraftKings, you win on FanDuel, or vice versa. When you win on one site, you win on both. That wasn't the case. But on DraftKings, you had 4,350 in entries for $28,200 in winnings for a 549% ROI. Just
is that good?
Slightly better than like the minus 60% you were doing last week.
Yeah, pretty decent. 549% ROI. It got really close. So just a little background here. So 4,350 in entries. That's going to look pretty similar every week, where I'm maxing the milli, which is $20 now. At least most of the weeks is $20. Also maxing the slant, and the reason I do that is because the slant has much flatter payouts, 2x min cash, not a large percentage to first place. So it gives me more even distribution on weeks where I finish in the top 1% compared to the top 0.001%. So that helps me smooth out the variance throughout the year. And so this week I finished 4th in the slant for 15,000 and 9th in the milli for 10,000.
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about the slant. If you have the bankroll, I would definitely prefer maxing the slant than the milli. It's just so much better payout structure. And then if we combine both your DraftKings and FanDuel for year to date, 16,700 in entries, 35K, a little over 35K in winnings for 110% ROI, which is pretty solid.
Yes, man. I would, if you look at, I think Awesemo posted last year. We talked about it on one of the $1 Million Missions last year. Awesemo grinds every sport, every contest size, mostly plays a lot of the smaller type contests, very high buy-ins. And his ROI for the year, I think it was 2020 or 2019, was 7%.
Wow.
But he plays so much volume, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally seven figures of earnings.
Yeah.
But for me, it goes to show like how much we do crush NFL Classic here, because this could go down, but it's a very encouraging sign that this happened in week 3. But if this holds up, this will be the third consecutive year of a 100% plus ROI in NFL Classic, which is, I think, just unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard of anything like that. That's just absolutely nuts. And we always talk about anything double digits is great, and then now you're gonna have to do, like, big brain meme. It's like it's ascending into triple digits is the norm.
Yeah,
It is nuts.
for real.
And then we're bringing back the chart because you had the spike week. Down,
Hashtag Spike Week.
down,
Let's go.
hashtag spike week. So this is the chart. Shout out Bismo who makes it because I'm too lazy. And and so yeah, we'll be updating this chart every week with Brian's progress as well. And then let's hop over really quick. I know we like to show it how we did in the DraftKings Survivor and the DraftKings Pick'em. Over on Survivor, we survived. That's always good. We had Arizona and Denver, two of our 3 remaining picks, both survived. We're now a part of the top 77% that have made it so far through the first 3 weeks. And I think this week is actually going to be kind of challenging from a game theory perspective.
Yeah, and we haven't been spending too much time on Survivor. If you guys want more discussion about this, let us know in the chat. But we did get one specific question about Survivor this week, so I figured we'd bang it out. Moose, the question was about Buffalo being such a big favorite this week. Do we think that they're too popular to fail? The Saints, they're also very popular. Moose, I think the thing we have to check is how popular does Buffalo get? You and I both think they'll exceed 50% because they're 17-point home favorites against the Titans. But to me, we've talked about we can't really take these super large, popular teams just because you need those types of teams to lose to whittle down the field. And then 2, Buffalo is another team that has 80+% win probability multiple times throughout the year, so it's not a reason to rush into picking them. So to answer that question, I think this is a week to fade Buffalo and just pray that we get some variance on it.
Yeah, because even best case or worst case scenario, they absolutely crush and we survive and whatever. If week 15 comes around and they have another 80% chance, that's always great to have in your back pocket. Week 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever. That's
because in this contest you're going to need to get to week 18 to win the Millie. Yeah. So you got to actually prepare.
I really don't want to have to play Houston like week 18 plus 15-point underdogs for $1 million.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can find better ways to gamble.
Exactly. Yeah. Really quick, Ken has a question. Says, why do you think you hit so early? Did you do anything different, or did variance just come around?
I think it was definitely some variance. We made some minor tweaks to the model to account for some early season stuff, and I think that helped a little bit. But 2, I wasn't as consistently using the Curtis Samuel theory all year last year. It was something I really started implementing like 100% of the time. Like week 13 or 14, I can't remember what it was, but it was like the second half of last year. So that gives me 2 top 10 Millie finishes on DraftKings since fully implementing that strategy. So again, we believe that's the key to unlocking NFL Classic large field contests, and the results are kind of supporting us there.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny says first 2 weeks game stacks didn't really do too well, but this week they went off. Is that why you think you had such a good week, or you're just sticking to the process?
Yeah, this is a great call. Great call, Johnny. We talked about it, and I've answered countless questions about people saying, do you still need the 3-1 stack? Like, one, let's pump our brakes. It's only been 2 weeks, right? And they're saying we talked about it. I think it was last week, right? Most the base rate fallacy, where there are going to be weeks where these non-3-1 stacks win, just because there's so many people playing non-3-1 stacks. It's it's a greater chance for it to hit because more people are playing it. But we know that there's much greater leverage playing 3-1 stacks because the field doesn't do it as often compared to how often they win. And when we see 3-1 stacks hit like they did this week, it wasn't as surprising to me, Moose, because in previous weeks we saw garbage lineups near the top. We didn't see a bunch of industry sites talking about how they or their members did well. But this week, because it was such a correlated group, it wasn't surprising to see a couple industry sites and a couple people that we know post screenshots because it was such a correlated week, which is what we play for.
Yep, you're exactly right there. Really quick, I do just want to talk about our pick'em because that was like the worst part of our week. It seems like we can't really we had a great start. We've been struggling ever since. We went 2-3 again last week. We're tied for 342nd. I think top 150 or 135 get paid. We're gonna go like 1-17 picking Washington every week.
Yeah, we're about to ban ourselves from picking Washington. I'll say that.
Yeah, and Cincinnati, Cleveland, Kansas City, Green Bay. Brian, like we were talking about because we met up for the games. It seems like we have one really good, one really bad, and then the other 3 coin flips we just lose. So
Basically,
yeah,
it's basically we got some coin flip variants of week 1, so we're still evaluating our process here.
exactly. Yep. So as I bring back up the $1 Million Mission logo, I'm gonna answer a couple questions here. Yeah, Spikowski says Houston's going to have Ty God back week 18, but I still don't want to have Ty God to get God level money.
I don't want any survivor pick resting on David Culley's shoulders. So
yeah. Carl says G-Star, I remember the video Rooney made on tight end positions. I think bad tight ends are actually the good tight ends. What are your thoughts on that?
Dude, tight end is such a garbage position this year. It's so bad, and there's definitely a lot of merit to just punting the position in most lineups. And then I was, galaxy braining it with Bismo in our staff chat, like maybe bad tight ends are the Curtis Samuel pieces now, right? This position's so bad, why not just pull it? Why not just play a tight end in a high game total environment? We saw it with Tyler Higbee. Tyler Conklin got there with the Minnesota-Seattle game stack. Gronk's gotten there a couple times this year. Maybe that's the move.
Yeah, the fact that you're putting Gronk on that same level, I gotta flame you on that.
Well, he was super cheap, is my point.
Yeah.
He was real cheap the first couple weeks.
No, I know what you mean. And then Spokane says, I think if a bunch of teams go off, it dilutes the power of stacks. You want just like 2 or 3 teams going off. I kind of agree with that as well, right?
Yeah, because there was some resistance near the top for me in the millie at least, because a Minnesota 3-1 stack went off with DK Metcalf as the run back. Justin Herbert stacks went off. So yeah, there was definitely a couple teams that went off this week. Ideally, you want just your one team to go off, but it's gonna be tough on a especially with the NFL passing more and more. It's gonna be a little bit difficult for that to be avoided. But again, we're just gonna keep playing our stacks.
Yeah, that's all we can do. And don't forget, don't get it twisted. I also want a live final ticket. Granted, it is like the worst live final probably in the history of DFS, but it's still a live final with a game stack.
Yeah, and that was just a 40-man field, right? Obviously, nobody game stacked in that, but yeah, that was again. I mean, congrats on that, Moose. It's a ticket is a ticket is a ticket, so good work there.
Yeah, nothing like driving 8 hours for basically what to first prize is going to be like what my gas is going to be. So should be an exciting time. It's going to be great. We're going to have some content around it. I'm just going to make the most of it.
Yeah, look up the Rush 34. I think that's what it's called. If you guys are interested in what Moose was talking about.
Yeah, I think Garrett is also going to be there. He wants me to pick him up. Might have some content with me and Garrett road tripping. If that's something you all would like let us know.
Yeah.
Why not, right? All right, cool. So let's jump into it. Back over to we'd like to bring up the Fantasy Labs contest dashboard. I have it set up here for that was the 444, but we'll switch over to the Millionaire Maker here. Brian, real quick, your game-winning stack, we'll pull up the lineup here once it loads up. But do you know how popular your game stack was?
I have not done the accounting yet to see how popular it was. Okay. I did know that there were a couple top 10 teams that had the same exact 3-1. So again, it's not like the entire field is going to avoid that. So not surprising. And then there were some sharper players that had it too. So
yeah. So let's see if I can pull your lineups here. All right, cool. So, yeah, this lineup here, I think this is it. Ninth place finish. Let me see if you all can see that. Yeah, it looks like you all can see that. Yeah, you pretty much crushed it there with the game stack. Stafford, Kupp, Higbee brought it back with Godwin. Not much else you can say.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this was a beautiful, beautiful lineup. Alexander Mattison is something we'll talk about here in a second. But most, I mean, the underrated aspect of game stacking is the sweat experience, right? And it seems that at least the last, I think like 3 of the 4 sweats I've had on a Sunday, we've been watching the games together, and it becomes palpable in the air, right? Once that 4 o'clock window hits and you see you got 5 guys left and they start scoring, and literally every touchdown moves you up like 20,000 spots, 30,000 spots.
Yeah.
A catch in the final quarter moves you up $5,000, right? Like it starts to become a thing, and everyone around is watching, and it becomes that experience. And so that's an underrated aspect of stacking as well, as opposed to needing like 5 different things from one game. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to get there, but I mean, if most we were looking at it, second half was starting, and I had the most player minutes remaining in the millie. I thought I had a really good chance, and you only get those chances a couple times a year, but I can't complain about it being this early, and basically now free rolling the rest of the year with the millie challenge.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you mentioned the whole experience. Like, we were at our parents' house watching the games. They have a pretty sick TV setup as well, and our parents didn't really understand the concept of like how close you were, and so it was funny when mom was just like, how much is each catch worth, and you're like, Godwin made a catch like super late. You're like, yeah, that just won me like another $5,000. That catch right there.
It was like a 9-yard catch, right?
Yeah,
Like, it wasn't even like.
She was like, holy shit, wow, we gotta watch this. Yeah. And it was funny you talk about sweating the experience, because in my live final ticket I had Evans and you had Godwin, and like once I realized how close you were, I was like I don't care about this $3 contest. Like win your millie, and I can always try and enter this contest later. Like,
hey, that's both worlds. We both won it, so.
Yeah. Carl says, you sweat while watching games, you're amazing, but if you're sweating just sitting on the couch, you might need to work out more.
Appreciate that, Carl. For those of you who watch the Occupy YouTube channel, Carl is a frequent commenter on our videos, and we appreciate the engagement, Carl. Yeah. We're still trying to figure out if you're a troll or not, or if you're a real person that talks that way. It's one of the greatest mysteries in the Occupy world. So.
I do just want to point out here across your lineups, what's great about having the game stacks across all your lineups. Out of your 150, you did have 3 in the top 1%. But what I think is even probably more impressive is 15% in the top 10, 30% in the top 20. We talk about, and we've talked about it before, where you just need a handful of things to go your way once you're in that top 10%, 1%. And that's what really makes or breaks from $1 million or to $10,000. And the fact that you're able to get 15% of your lineups in the top 10, now you just need some things to go your way, and some things did, but not to the full extent. But it's great to have in this case the 23 opportunities for things to go your way.
Yeah, that just gives you the opportunity for your one-offs around your stacks to hit, you get to get some defense variance, right? The more you can get there, obviously, the better, and it's easier said than done, of course. But that's the power of stacking, and that's why we look at these metrics every week. And we talked about in the Ultimate Guide, we talk about it on this show. When I'm building showdown lineups or MMA lineups, like how often do I get into the top 1%? That's a metric you should look at for GPP. Don't look at your ROI, because the payouts are so top heavy that one win can skew everything, and no wins can skew everything. Because if you're getting like just for instance PGA this year, I had like 12 top 0.1% finishes, and I knew that my process had gotten a lot better this year by looking at those finishes. Even though I never won a GPP this year, I know that because of my frequency in the top 0.1%. A GPP win's coming in PGA very, very soon. And by monitoring that, if you've seen you're not getting lineups to the top, that means you're not building enough risk reward ratio into your lineups.
Mm-hmm. I have there's a really good question here from DotBets. Says, what are some of your processes after seeing what the optimizer spits out? Do you check all 150 lineups and maybe change one guy here or there?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So to me, let's stick with classic first, and this is what I look at. Because I set my range like 49K to 50K on FanDuel, whatever the $1,000 salary spread is. And generally, I don't want $1,000 left over in the lineup, but I found that personally, when building that way, it allows me to get an even distribution of player exposures for the guys that I want. So after my lineups are built, I first check what do my exposures look like at each position, right? The first couple runs, I might have like 70% of a running back that I don't want, or I might have like 0.7% of a receiver that's top 10 in the model. It's like, okay, well, I need to manually bump his exposure up. Yeah. So that's the first thing. I check to see if my exposures make sense. 2, I'll sort by salary remaining. So I'll get those $1,000 left over, $900 left over. and I'll look for players that I have enough exposure to and try to upgrade those to players I don't have enough exposure to. And normally that's a 5 or 10 lineup exercise. So generally I'm building 10 to 20 times to get the exposure where I need them and then making that final swap on the final run.
That's great. And then just to piggyback off that question, how often are you looking at that player exposure or like the combination? And I know you build on high randomizer, but sometimes it still spits out Patrick Mahomes and Rob Gronkowski are in 80% of lineups together. Like it's that uncorrelated 80% you don't want. So are you checking that tab as well?
Yeah, fortunately, our lineup builder does a fantastic job avoiding that. Like that example is literally why we built the randomizer into it, because other optimizers could not get that right. Like, why are these two uncorrelated guys in 90% of lineups together, right? Yeah. So our lineup builder already does a great job of that. There are rare cases where it's like, why are these two dudes in 70% lineups, and I'll go manually swap it out. But yeah, that is thanks to the lineup builder. I don't have to do too much work in that regard.
Definitely. Cool. Let's see here. Yeah, Top Bet says, I love that I'm sometimes fighting the opto because it's not spitting out what my mind is thinking. And Brian, it definitely can be that way sometimes. I've done it before as well. And you're like, what is this doing? Like, it's not like optimizer work. And you kind of have to just fiddle around with it, whether, like you said, you're building up to 20 times sometimes. Sometimes you just have to do that.
Well, I can already tell this episode's going to be filled with nuggets that people can take away and write down, because the great thing about using the lineup builder, first of all, you get to see what lineup builder is going to look like, right? Because I might go into a slate, like I think it was last week. It's like, of course I want McCaffrey, right? He's only 10% owned. He ranks near the top of the model. I want a ton of him. But no matter what you did, you could not get McCaffrey into your lineup, right? It did not matter. So that's telling me I need more mid-range running backs. I'm going to go heavy on those guys. And then two, the benefit of this, and this is getting a little bit deeper, is, our minds can only wrap around so much, right? Like, we got the underperforming receivers, we got the plug plays, top of the model. Like, we can only think of so much. And if we only did what our brain told us to do, if we're hand building or trying to give it specific things to do, we're going to miss out on a lot of the variance in combination. So, like, just trying to think here. Like, I want 5% of all receivers in my player pool, right? And even though a guy like, I'm just trying to think here. I'm just trying to think of a random example. Like, let's just say
KJ Osborne.
Like KJ Osborne in a non-stack or something, right? I like him, but if I was hand building, like, he wouldn't even be in my first 10 lineups, my first 20 lineups probably. Mm-hmm. But I need that optimizer to take that bias away from me and build it in there for me. There's a great interview. There's this new guy on the scene, Nerdy Tenor. He did an interview with Roto Grinders, and I think this is an extreme way to do it. And I don't think most people would have this trust in doing it. But he comes from a poker background, incredible math background. When he builds 150 lineups, he builds, I can't remember what the number it was, but it was like he builds 150,000 lineups or 15,000 lineups. And whatever program he uses, takes a random sample from that 15,000 because he doesn't want any bias in trying to pick players or doing what his brain says. And I mean, this guy, the results speak for themselves of what he does. And obviously you need a very good math background to do that. But it speaks to the larger point of sometimes we need the lineup builder or an optimizer to give us other ideas than what our brain is trying to lock into a lineup.
Yeah, incredible. I can't wait to. I got to do some more research on that guy because he sounds incredible. Because how many times have we done it where we've loaded up the model for the week and we're like, huh, why is this guy all the way at the top here? Or even now, it doesn't always have to be at the very top. It could be someone mid-range that is normally in the low range. You're like, wait, why is this guy here? Is something wrong with the model? And he has a pretty decent game. Like, that happens a lot of times. So, sometimes we have to just try. I got the shirt on. Trust the model. I don't know if you all can see it. But sometimes we just have to do that, put our biases aside, and go with that. Now, speaking of that, I do want to ask you about Alexander Mattison, because it was a unique slate for this where we had a 4 p.m. running back that was so, that was questionable, I guess is what they would say. And Mattison off like 20% owned. I don't know why. Like I even said it in Spanish. That's how like confused I was about it. I don't know why he was only that much. So why don't you tell me about what your thought process was on DraftKings and FanDuel for Alexander Mattison, and if you thought that process worked for you.
Yeah, I actually thought, money aside, I thought the process was perfect. Not to pat
Mhm.
myself in the back too hard. So we have to think about this situation a couple times because we're gonna uncover it a handful of times throughout the season where we get a cheaper backup running back who the price doesn't fully reflect his role. The first thing we have to look at is where is his price on each site?
Mhm.
Because on FanDuel, it was a smash play at 5,200. There was nobody around him that could easily come close to his floor ceiling combination. DraftKings, he was the 10th highest priced running back, 6K. Still a really good play and somebody I wanted in my player pool with decent exposure to. But on FanDuel, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So this comes into trusting injury reports, trusting injury sources, trusting national reporters, because again, this goes what we talked about it on Saturday, right? This is a high level heuristic. If Dalvin Cook had a high ankle sprain, I'm not playing him. And if we get any negative reports, it means he's probably not playing.
Yeah.
Sunday morning rolls around, we get news that Dalvin Cook's probably not going to play. And the trend gets worse and worse. So to me, this was a great situation because it was a 4 o'clock game.
Mhm.
And if it was a 1 o'clock game and Dalvin was ruled inactive at 11:30, we get Alexander Mattison 40% ownership probably.
Yeah.
The fact that there's slight uncertainty and the fact that people don't even want to deal with swaps / don't know how to deal with swaps in the middle of a slate lowered his ownership considerably. So for me, what I had to do was, okay, what I want to, I have to play this like I think Dalvin Cook is out. So
Mhm.
for me, that's 100% allocation to Madison on FanDuel. We talked about this before. Lock button, cheap backup running backs when they're thrust into a starting role. So I put him in every single lineup. DraftKings, I had what is the exposure here to him? 25%, right?
Yeah.
Which I felt was going to be way over the field. But again, he wasn't as glaring of a value here. Then my next step was, okay, let's say I'm wrong. What can I possibly do at 3:30 p.m. if Dalvin Cook plays? Because that just takes the value away from everybody.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought, is there any direct swaps I can make? I don't want 100% of somebody in my lineup on FanDuel if it's not Alexander Mattison. So my thought was, okay, let's find 6 guys that I think are relatively even plays. Let's get their IDs. I'll download the CSV at 3:30, and I'll put one guy in 16% of the lineups, the next guy in the next 16%, and just swap it all out that way through the CSV. So the long, the high level picture here is having a backup plan for a late swap if you think there's any chance that it might go awry, and also just having trust in the process that, if you think there's going to be an edge, fully maximize it the best you can.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. I got to go back and find some of those charts, but we've done the research, and again with the people who 150 max, anytime there's a situation like this with a cheap backup running back that due to injury gets thrusted into the starting role, you either see the 150 maxers either like nothing, which is kind of rare, but most of the time they're literally just like maxing like 90 to 100% every lineup having this person in there. And I always feel good when I'm on the side of the pros. I don't know about you, Brian, but
I feel pretty good too, and I think we told this anecdote last year maybe, or maybe it was this offseason, I can't remember. But I was listening to a podcast with an advantage, I think it was an advantage blackjack player or advantage craps player, basically a professional gambler. And the one thing that stuck out to me from his interview was, he said, when I find an edge, my brain goes to immediately, what's the extreme here? What happens if I completely maximize this edge? What does that look like, right? To him, the example he gave was they were trying to control dice, right? You know how we try to, when you're rolling dice, try to set the dice and throw and get specific numbers, right?
yeah,
He was like, if the dice are a little bit bigger, I think that might be an edge because we can control them better. So he said, if my edge is that, let's take this to extreme. Let's get the biggest dice we could possibly find, like novelty dice, and let's see if we can control those, right? Because if we know if we can control that, we can pare that down to even a little bit bigger dice. Not obviously novelty size dice, but that would be an edge for us. So I thought, I was like, that's an incredible move because
yeah,
in DFS, right, the edges are slim. If we can find an edge that we think is there, then we got to maximize it. And that's where it comes here. And when we got the idea that Mattison wouldn't be as popular as he should be if he was on a 1 o'clock slate, to me that screamed, let's maximize this edge to the absolute max and let's go all in on him.
yeah. And again, that was what FanDuel was, but on DraftKings, like I said, he wasn't the absolute smash play, so you still had to dial that back some.
Right. Exactly. Only 6K, a great play, and it still got leverage there. What was he on FanDuel, Moose? Do you remember his ownership?
I believe he was 19% on FanDuel.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just like, come on. It was an absolute no-brainer. I'll take that risk and have a backup plan in place if it's not going to pan out. But again, given everything that we knew, all the information we had at hand, it was a fantastic play.
Yeah. Matt says new shirt idea: exploit the field. I like it.
I like that. I
I
like
like
that.
it.
That's a great idea.
Definitely. Again, also looking at some of your other top leverage plays. Let me just go back to all positions. Looks like a lot of running backs: Michelle, Mike Davis, DeAndre Swift, Atlanta defense, Jacoby Myers, and of course, every quarterback you do in game stacks, you're going to get leverage on. So talk to me about Sonny Michel, who was your and Mike Davis, who were your top 2 leverage plays.
Yeah, not fans of either, obviously. But they helped me fit in the game stacks. And Michelle, if he caught passes, like if he was like a full, like a 3-down running back that historically has caught passes, I would have locked button him here because Darrell Henderson was out. Michelle was 4,900. But the other issue here, and Chris pointed this out when we were talking on Friday or Saturday, that unlike Mattison on FanDuel, who was 5,200 and there was nobody around him, like Sonny Michel, you could play guys 4,900. Right, there was on DraftKings. There's plenty of guys there. On DraftKings, you really need a lock button running back to be like 4K, in order to consider putting them in all of your lineups.
Exactly, yeah. Matt says Yahoo is maybe 40% on Mattison in their big GPP. Still with stacks, not a problem. Yeah, and key point with stacks, it still wasn't a problem.
Right, exactly, and that's again we're getting past 10:30 here, but that also. In the big GPP, I think that attracted a lot of sharks, even though their goal is to make it a more casual experience. Anyone who's not a super veteran is now flocking over there because the overlay, the guaranteed money. So I think that baller contest might be pretty sharp for the most part.
Yeah, and I know it's past our 10:30, but Brian, if you have the time, let's stay till like 10:40. Let's go through our normal process. There's also a couple more questions I want to ask you, get some nuggets out of you, if that's cool with you.
Let's do it.
All right, so on the flip side of things, your least leverage plays, Cooper Kupp, which was a part of your stacks, and I want to point out that even though you were minus 20% on the field, maybe this might be super galaxy brain. You're still getting leverage on the field because you had his quarterback in the stack.
Yeah, this fucking guy, dude. He's absolutely the Devontae Adams of this year.
Yeah, Devontae Kupp.
But yeah, no, we talked about this in the preview, right? The yearly preview. Yeah, Matthew Stafford's only 7%. So you figure if Kupp goes off, I want Matthew Stafford to throw like 4 touchdowns to get leverage on the field. If he's going to be 33% and I'm playing him, I better have a damn good correlation around him. And just pray that he's not the only one who scores on the offense, because then all those one-off Cooper Kupp lineups just crush me. So, yeah, this is the prime example of stacking with a popular player.
Until he runs 3 jet sweeps and Stafford gets 4 points. I know, right? Really quick, we do want to talk about some of the stuff we have. So if we go to the reports here, salary distribution still pretty normal. A lot of people are using 50,000, which makes sense. Again, the world is saved. Tight end usage is gone down.
Yes.
Still 15% of lineups in the Million Maker use a tight end in flex, compared to only 5% in the top 1% of this lineup.
Dude, it's such a trash position. Why would you ever want to put 2 of those guys in your lineup if you don't have to?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. Like, I don't even want to dissect why. Just don't do it.
I'm just glad the field was smashed this week.
Yeah. If we look at duplicates, this lineup was duplicated 166 times. Wasn't even that good, I don't think.
No, that I'm pretty sure that's like the roto grinders or awesome or whatever. Just like we talk about this every week. Just like the first lineup, the optimal lineup that they generate.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta like it because it has Jamar Chase in it, but that's just the bias in me.
You gonna captain him on Thursday night?
I mean, yeah, why not, right?
I mean, your Bengals, you get very, very rare chance to see them as a 7-point favorite. So.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I will have 100% Bengals captains. I will not.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna 5-1 everything and just root for it. Just root for it. If you all didn't see, what was it? What's the last time? I don't know when was it, but like every time they scored, I just kept adding on a piece of clothing until finally I got like 90. Felt like I was 190 degrees in like a sweater in the middle of summer or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not that fun. It's not that fun.
Well, yeah, it was a rare case for the Bengals scoring multiple times in a game.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's take a look really quick at the leaderboard. And again, we're here for 5 more minutes. So if you have any questions about Brian's exposures, about anything related to any of this, now is the time to ask. So if we look at the winner, congratulations, WMM. He had a pretty solid stack. I'm not even going to lie.
It was pretty sick. 3-1 game stack. Josh Allen, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, not including Stephon Diggs. So we got basically a double Curtis Samuel theory here. Ran it back with Logan Thomas, cheap piece, tight ends, trash position. Might as well get him in a game stack. Had a 2-1 stack with Mattison, Jefferson. Ran it back with DK Metcalf. Um, yeah, I mean, this is just an incredibly sick lineup. Well done for this guy or girl.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, awesome. Covered basically all the trends. I still don't think a running back DST stack is necessary, but yeah, fantastic lineup. And if we look at the game stack section, which we know can be a little off, and if we look at if we can find one that has 4 players in it. Yeah, it looks like this one was, of course, your most popular one, or the one in your winning lineup. Still, even if we like triple it, because we know this number is not correct, like 1% of lineups having this.
But then that's with a 33% receiver, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. So that's great. Let's take a look really quick. I want to look at the 4-4-4-4. Yeah, that lineup was in a lot more stacks, which again shows that that's a sharp play to do the game stack. We want to see who got duped in there. Hey, no one actually got duplicated. Nice.
Wow! Congrats to the pros this week. Well done.
Definitely. Leaderboard. Shout out Whistles, like the easiest, like the greatest player ever.
Fucking goat.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Do we need to talk about the slant? I know you maxed it, but you just threw in the same lineups in the slant as you do in the millie, right?
Yeah, someone asked in the Discord today, and once the strategy gets past a certain point, right? And I said at the top of the show, I did it to smooth out variance for my 150. If there was 2 different contests with similar payouts, maybe I do 300 lineups, right? 2 different sets of 150. But to me, this is a perfect, bankroll management technique.
Yeah, exactly. Matt says play dogs on showdown slates unless it's the Bengals. Let's go, Matt. I like you. Let's go. Ken says, what made you decide to come off the Seattle Minnesota stack?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, the total did drop, right? I think it dropped a point or a point and a half, and that was kind of concerning to me. 2, with the Baltimore COVID situation, that total increasing, I really wanted a piece of that game, and I couldn't, in good conscience, 3-stack Detroit. So I just one-sided that with Baltimore. I also like the Kyler Murray and Arizona surprise, right? And I wanted 3-1 stacking them. So I thought it's either go with 2 of those or go with the Seattle Minnesota game stack. And with the total dropping in Seattle, Minnesota, and the Alexander Mattison dynamic, where now if I was lock buttoning him, I would have to include 3x2s. It became a whole thing, and I think that dynamic just made it one step easier to get off that game as a game stack.
Yeah, and so as a nugget you can piece from that, could you say that if you're lock buttoning a player, for example in this case a backup running back, I mean, does it make sense to even stack that game? I could see if they're a pass catching running back, but even then, like, do you think it's too risky to even to game stack that?
I go back and forth on this. I think you still game stack as long as it fits all the criteria we normally look for.
Mm-hmm.
Because you kind of have to treat it independently as this guy's going to likely get 10 points, and that's really all you need from. Even though obviously you want 20, 30 points, but if a guy gets 10 points at 4K or 5K on FanDuel, that's enough to win you a GPP. My Jalen Samuels lineup, he got like 9 or 10 points, and that was enough to win 100K. So, yeah, I think you can still do it just as long as the other metrics are telling you to stack that game.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good point. Brian, we got like a minute left. Any last lingering thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, shout-outs, or anything you want to talk about before I take us out?
No. I'll save. I was listening to some interviews this week in different, I was listening to actor interviews, musician interviews, like very randomly. We'll save this for next week. We'll save it for the downturn because it's about the process. And we're gonna need some things to talk about when I have a losing week. So I'll save those for the next week. I'll just say that I'm super excited that this happened early this year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the pressure has come off. Let's keep this thing rolling and let's get a couple more spike weeks here before the end of the year.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. We tend to focus on DFS, and so you follow or listen to DFS podcasts, fantasy football podcasts. But sometimes if you take a step back and listen to, like you said, actor, or it could be anything that involves some sort of process, you take a step back, then your mind can race and say, okay, I can probably apply this to DFS or some sort of mentality, and those are fantastic opportunities.
There was one day in the summer, I can't remember what it was. I listened to like 8 hours of YouTube videos of like different actors and actresses explaining their process and talking about their journey. I because those are the types of things that you can pick from and put in your own process, no matter what you do in life. Like if you're listening to other successful people in a different field talk about it, you can definitely apply some concepts. And so again, this is something we'll talk about later weeks when I'm negative 40% ROI for a week and I need some consolation after not hitting for 6 weeks in a row.
What do they always say? Like make yourself surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Always the move. Always the move.
Definitely. So, all right. So that'll do it for tonight's episode of the $1 Million Mission, the Week 3 edition. From OccupyFantasy.com, I am Moose. He is Brian. Until next time, have a good night.
Peace.